And welcome to you all. And we'll borrow from Andreas's input that good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whenever and wherever you are. And we at Grace Healing, of course, the opportunity to serve you. And this is Debbie Reynolds. And she's not my sister, but she is my sister.
Yeah.
We are blessed to be here this weekend, and we wanted the opportunity to sit down with you and discuss a number of topics that have come up because she serves people every day. I serve every people day, and we see commonalities between those that we're serving in the body of humanity. And recently we had a dialogue, this was a few months back, which actually initiated us getting together here in this month of June. And of course, we have wonderful conversations. So it's like we gotta.
Conversation was that long.
Well, it was related to
Yeah.
the teaching process and
Mhm.
and how people have lost sight of what our role is as we come together with people. And I think you were talking about, different spiritual teachers' guides and shamanic type guidance. And then we were brought into the subject of yogis and different instructors and stuff like that. But give a little background on yourself first before we jump into that, so that people know who you know you.
A little background.
Yeah.
I've been on this amazing adventure with the living God for many decades.
Yeah.
And had the privilege of experiencing that love in such a deep way and having the privilege of sharing it with
Yeah.
many, and seeing how Yahweh would have us trust him in all things and bring everything before this God, before pursuing anything else. So, we talk about teachers and schools of thought and everything. No, first God.
Exactly.
First God. And receive that discernment. Do we now pursue this? Do we receive from that? Do we sit under this person? No, we're under and with and in God.
Exactly.
That's
And that's important because I think, like, you say that in a quick statement, but the reality is that's one of the things that consumes people is this willingness to present themselves under another individual. Like we hear it within many, what's your covering? And it's like, well, no, I seek God within, I seek God's presence. I cover myself with God's presence. I don't go to this guru or that teacher or this minister or that preacher or whatever. I go to God first, then I sit with this minister and I listen to the words that they're bringing me. Because I go to God first, I hear that the priest is in alignment with God and then not in alignment, then back in alignment with God. And it's the same way you and I have shared before with groups and individuals, that's even how we approach scripture. It's just as Yeshua taught us, that we seek first the living word, God's presence within us, then we measure scripture. And in that, we can delineate portions and segments within scripture that aren't in alignment with the nature of God. Like a comment that says, I am a vengeful God.
Yeah.
God is not vengeance. God is absolute purity of love, and in the presence of God, nothing of corruption to sustain. So God need not vengeance. God only needs surrender. So when people surrender to God's presence, it becomes that which God sees it to be. But that can only come if we seek God first, not the person that we are under.
Absolutely.
Because God has made it so that we would call upon God's name anytime we are in need of distress.
Anytime.
But then religiously, we were governed in a way that religious bodies wanted to lay hold of us, claim the resources that we had. So they changed it and took the name of God out, the vibrational frequency that ties you directly to the living presence of God in Yahweh, Yahweh Elohim, then Yahshua, God saves. So these beautiful expressions. And what's happened is we've moved to this place, as we were just heading into, where teachers impose themselves into a person's journey in such a way that they're forcing instruction instead of coming alongside and guiding them, like you said earlier today.
You know, I often say nobody has the market cornered on absolute truth
Exactly,
except in God.
exactly.
You know, sit before and just be centered there, and then truth will be revealed and we can follow in that path, in that flow. But if we start listening over here without taking it first to God, then
Yeah.
we get off track.
It's
Get off
easily
track.
diverted.
Easily. And then there's all of our background, our history,
Yeah,
and all the messages we've received. And
exactly.
as each one rises up, we need to bring that before God so that we can discern what's true and what's not.
Agreed.
And then when it's not true, to also release it to God, but then ask for the truth to fill that void. Because
Exactly.
otherwise that untruth, that lie is going to come back in.
Mhm.
It's going to come back in.
In a multitude.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Not by itself. As
exactly.
Jesus, you know, Yeshua said, you clean the house, get rid of that one demon,
Yep.
unhealthy spirit, and leave it empty. That spirit goes, whoa, hey, buddies. And then 7 times comes back.
Exactly.
And the final condition is way worse. And I've seen that, unfortunately.
And I know that this
number
will
of
shift the
times.
direction of where I thought we were going in our conversation, but what you just said
Mhm.
is evidence of the vibrational nature and influence upon us.
Okay.
Because let's describe, say, like what you're saying, you were being deceived, yet you cleared the house of the spirit of deception.
Yeah.
But that vibrational frequency of deception is known within you or upon you.
Mhm.
You've cleared it.
Yes.
But to the spiritual realm, that vibrational frequency is known to be in proximity to you, known to be from within you. So it will, with numbers,
Come back.
come
Yeah.
to populate that ground with many other things of a
Mhm.
spiritual nature that have known themselves as named as deceit, manipulation,
Mhm.
coercion, and all these different things. So when Yeshua says that if you release anything of a spirit nature or of a demonic nature, you must welcome the presence of God within,
Yes.
or many of like kind will return.
Correct.
And that's not to be overlooked. It's extremely important. And this is
Very,
where it
very.
shifts back into the teaching realm.
Mhm.
Most teachers don't know that that's supposed to be their role over those that are the students under them. And what you and I have witnessed, whether it be through yogic practices, yoga teaching, or
Mhm.
qigong, meditative practices, transcendental meditation practices, in our American system, we tend to turn it into the burger I want now,
Yeah.
instantaneously, fast
Yeah.
food resolved.
Yes.
I want to learn yoga today.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure about you, but what I've seen is when yoga was first introduced to this nation, it came in a very small measure
Mhm.
to people that were truly seeking on a spiritual ground.
Yes.
From that spiritual ground, they found the wealth of information of how to open their bodies and release tension and distress.
Mhm.
But they began from a spiritual process, discovered physical benefit, and increased in both. But then they found it wonderfully marketable in the
Oh,
American
yes.
market.
The American way, yes.
Yes. So yogis
Mhm.
that understand their spiritual ground became yoga teachers that taught movement
Mhm.
and fluidity and muscle strengthening.
Yes.
They lost the spiritual balance. And I guess I would say, like, I'd like to hear your perspective of what you've seen with people or witnessed as people have gone through that type of instruction.
Well, and I think it's not just in that realm, but in anywhere we go, we could be hungry for whatever.
Yep.
You know, and really it's a spiritual hunger. It's always a spiritual hunger,
Mhm.
you know, underneath. And we find something that sounds good to us, you know, but instead of knowing to bring it to our God first,
Yes.
and being centered there, we jump into it. And then we take that person as the one who knows you know, the way and sets a path for us.
Yep.
And I've seen that within churches. I've seen that in all kinds of groups, and it's a matter of, again, coming back to the source, because otherwise we find ourselves, and it might be not bad things, but it's not going to develop us in our relationship with the living God.
Yeah.
And to grow spiritually, you know.
Or in that respect, to ascend above traumas that we may know,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
traumas that we may not know that may
Yeah.
have happened generationally, or deceptions or curses that may have been against us that we did not know of or aware of.
Mhm.
And this is coming back to the teacher within the room. And I would speak this directly to people that see themselves as yoga teachers or teachers in a school system.
Anything.
Teachers or trainers in any aspect of a trade. People that are working in a ministerial body as ministers. Many people have lost sight of their role as a spiritual oversight. A yogi has a clear understanding that they are not there just teaching movement, stretching, opening, and the freedom of the body. They are observing a group of people to see what's rising within them spiritually and where the spiritual work needs to be done. And they're actively present in the process of meditative awareness, prayerful engagement, and intercessory releases. That's a true yogi. What I've witnessed personally, and I'm not sure if you witnessed the same thing, you've been into a number of programs or Pilates or yoga or whatever, people don't understand that this being an antenna of either receiving spiritual input or projecting spiritual output, if it's corrupted, will bring an altered message or a diminished form of expression or a diminished sense of glory. And if we don't assume the role of guiding people with the understanding that we have to be in the yogi mindset, which is spiritual oversight and intercession for those that we're witnessing in the process of receiving knowledge, we lose the very reality of what we're supposed to be here for.
And, you know, I often say you cannot give what you do not have.
Right.
And if we lose sight of that as a teacher or a leader, then we're now become part of the problem instead of part of a solution for people. And I find that it's human nature to gravitate to what's comfortable, what's familiar. And a lot of times it's pain and all the trauma. You know, that's familiar, and gravitate to something that looks more freeing or whatever, but isn't, because it can actually reinforce all that pain that we've experienced, because we're not coming to God first. We're not seeking to be under, you know, or come along, have someone come alongside us. I don't ever want to picture myself under anyone but God.
Agreed.
But, you know, come alongside someone
Exactly.
who is seeking God.
Well, that's what I've seen, like within certain yogis, there is a true reality of humility.
Yes.
As they do not see themselves above others, they see themselves as witnessing and interceding and presenting a spiritual outlet for whatever's going on and spiritual protection over them for the things they cannot see themselves or the things they couldn't bear. Because many times people going through the healing process where they stretch and they open the liver, and then all of a sudden they find they go home and they're extremely angry with their husband or their partner or their wife or whatever there happens to be, and they don't understand where the anger came from. A true yogi witnesses this rising, and they take somebody aside and they give them counsel so that when they return home in such a way that they are freed from the anger or influence, and they return into the embrace of love in their union, not anger that they can't control or reside with. So this is what I've seen in many teaching settings, is not only are they not connecting it to breath, but they become physicality centered. They're centered on this physical expression, and they've lost sight of the fact that that physical expression is going to stir something. There's a huge like yoga center on the East Coast here that I watch over and over, because they teach yoga instructors to go out and teach yoga. And I watch time and time again these yoga instructors that are in a beautiful, blessed union go to that center, return from that center, and destroy their relationship at home.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the teachers in that center are teachers, not yogis. They're teaching the physical construct of what to do within the yogic process without a clear awareness of what they're impacting on the spirit realm. And the spirit realm is accessed through us. It's not someplace at a distance.
Yeah.
You know,
Right here.
we hold the portal to access the spirit realm or
Yes.
to bring blessing or to reveal God's presence. It comes from within us. The kingdom of God is from within. And if we are not recognizing that we're not just there teaching a physical movement,
Correct.
but we are there witnessing things of a spiritual nature. And if we're not equipped for it, we shouldn't be in that role.
Absolutely.
And I learned that in my early stages of teaching Qigong and meditative practices and all this stuff, is I had awareness of what was going on spiritually within people, but I honestly had to withdraw for a time because I didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
I was seeing it. I was witnessing things rise in people and I was going, wow, what's happening with them? But through divine guidance, seeking God first,
Yes.
I was guided in a way to recognize the divine release process, to set free what I was witnessing rising in people. And like about a year later, I reactivated what is called the Abwun breath of class, which is the living breath of God within us. If I choose first the breath of God within and I breathe, that breath reveals all that does not belong of that breath. So an anger or confusion or sadness or depression or grief may show up that I can relinquish and replace it with God's presence. And honestly, that's not what I'm seeing in many of the teaching processes that have grown in America.
Well, it's so many are being trained to be, yoga instructors. And I was in a group and a young woman who was being trained, she stated, I really don't trust her like people. And I thought, oh, no.
Yeah. Well, say
let's
more
address
there.
that. Let's address that before you can't be in a position to go instruct anybody, if it's first here. And let's look at, and I didn't have the opportunity to engage with her long term, but look at where's that coming from?
Exactly.
What is that? And let's bring it before God.
So it's become a business model.
Yes.
I'm going to take a career on of doing such and such. But then in this point, they realize that, oh, well, I don't trust people.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. If there is no trust to support the bridge of the union you're forming, because that's another thing that teachers don't understand. In reality, you're establishing a union with the person that comes to seek knowledge in your presence. It is a holy union, not to be corrupted, not to be taken on in any ground, and not for self-gratification in any way. And in my practice, when I've served people, I cannot engage with them in a personal relationship. Because God moves through me in a certain way, I can't utilize the nature of how God is manifested through me as a way to build my relationship, manipulate, and control them. What I see many times in a teaching setting or in an instructional ground or a process of worship or whatever, is people have a tendency to engage in the person that has fallen into that spirituality ground with them. And then they lose and cross the line of physicality and embrace in a union that wasn't supposed to be. But they felt such presence that they translated it to self-gratification. And ministers overpower individuals, or teachers overpower, or and especially through these processes of the physicality, dealing with people that are working, that are probably healthier, more attractive, more beautiful, more expressed, woke up in their energies. They have the presence ability to give to one another. And all of a sudden it becomes this shared dialogue of sharing physical experiences with one another, and they still haven't done the spiritual work. So again, if people would take it away as a business model and look at it and how does a yogi present? A yogi presents because they have a calling from within. They're guided in such a way. They touch upon certain teachings, they're moved through teachings, and then all of a sudden a body of people elevate them.
Yes,
But they elevate them in the rate that this yogi now understands that there are spiritual things going on within them. Or Kung Fu master knows that there are spiritual things going on with them. So even though they're teaching them, they're still aware that there's something else going on in the background here. And they're also developed in their own spiritual journey that they've found things within them that are not clear or pure of the divine. And if that person is still willing to subject others to their impurity, that's where we start seeing these massive group like yoga retreats becoming, a lot of different abuses that have happened with people. But again, it's coming from intellect. I want to teach this instead of spiritually guided in such a way that I want to share in the nature of the divine. And I want to reveal the divine.
And because I'm called to this.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
There's all kinds of good idea, and people make suggestions, oh, you should do this or that. And I'm like, well, I'm going to be here. And if that's something I'm supposed to do, then it will flow.
Exactly.
And if not, I'm here, either way. So.
And then also taking care not to get caught in that physical trap, because you and I have witnessed this our whole lives with people. Oh, you'd be good at this.
Oh, well,
or, oh my God, you're so beautiful. You'd be amazing at that. Or you are such incredible flexibility. So now it's motivated from an outside force.
Yeah.
Observing you and providing an easy direction for the nature of who you are without doing the spiritual work.
Correct.
And I've seen many beautiful people, both men and women, that have been, oh, wow, you got incredible flex. You should be a yoga teacher. Not one person touched with them where you are in your spiritual journey. What's going on within your understanding of source and identity in God, Yahweh's presence, the living vibration of God's presence within you? Have you been able to deal with your past issues and traumas? Is this something that you're inflicting upon those people that want to learn from you, or have you truly found definitive healing? Because as much as there's spiritual work going on in the individuals within the room, there's also, if it's present within the yogi or yoga teacher without knowledge can inflict their spiritual presence on others.
Absolutely.
Whether it comes through the spirit of lust, comes through the spirit of manipulation, comes through self-deceit. These kinds of things can emerge, and they don't know that it's coming from the, quote, teacher, because the teacher hasn't done the spiritual work to know that they're the ones inflicting it upon the group.
And so it's key to do the spiritual work. And when you're in leadership of any kind, there's going to be people, if you're, I call in the flow, you're really serving and with grace and love, but people want to elevate you, when they're blessed through whether it's in yoga or counsel or whatever, they want to elevate you. And this is key to stay centered on God and bring it all, because the ego is there to feed on that, and it's too easy to get off, and then you're misleading other people too, because you haven't done the work yourself.
Agreed. And now this isn't just to pick on like where people are in their yogic practice or whether they have an actual yogi or if they have a yoga teacher. What we're trying to do is help people recognize that anytime you subject yourself into a place that is requiring instruction, if you don't have a yogi in presence there, then it is your responsibility to welcome Creator in so that you might see the measure of truth that comes toward you or the things that are not of truth in discernment. So if you have a wonderful practitioner that's amazing in teaching you the physical movements of your body and opening you up and helping you connect, most importantly, breath into these movements. If you find somebody that's gifted in that, yet they have no spiritual attunement to understanding what's stirring when you do those things, you can, in absolute confidence, connect with Creator within you and be an intercessory body in the midst of the group. You wouldn't take on the responsibility of the group, but you would pray for the head of that group. that person that is in that personal role, to pray for them to be increased through discernment, increased through wisdom, deepened in freedom from the spiritual things they don't recognize within themselves. And then you become an intercessory gift in their midst.
Yeah.
And again, it's not about to impose this on the people that are learning. It's about to recognize that if you're going to enter in this ground, the reality is it is first spiritual in nature.
Always, yeah.
It is second a physical and blessed result,
Mhm.
if it becomes a blessing or physical incorruption result. So the reality is a spiritual first in nature. If we understand that, then we have a responsibility to not walk in blind, as the word that we hear bandied about many times is the word sheeple.
Yeah.
Don't just walk in like
Yeah.
a sheep to the slaughter
Yeah.
through ignorance, the lack of knowing, the lack of understanding.
Mhm.
And that ignorance can be the very place that puts a person in harm without knowing. They walk in there thinking out of innocence, oh, this is going to be wonderful. But they don't know that a yoga teacher or a teacher of students in a school is not spiritually attuned in such a way, so they get bandied about by the winds of the earth.
Mhm.
They get bandied about by things that are not of truth, and then they start instructing students in things that are not of truth because they think they're supposed to just glom onto this new
Yes,
thing.
yes.
I mean, how like Dr. Spock back when the punishment and all the different things that were
Yeah.
going on, the spanking and all that,
Mhm.
all these things, and it was like everybody just glommed onto it
Yeah, yeah.
because there wasn't a discerning awareness that was
Mhm.
God first.
They allowed someone else to be the authority,
Exactly.
and there's no other authority
Agreed.
besides God.
Right.
Yeah.
And you and I have shared this
Mhm.
1,000 times when we're talking about the nature of if we're going to measure and weigh what is described as man's scripture, the attempt to describe the indescribable, the written
Yeah.
word
Yeah.
of man to describe the indescribable, which is the living word that is God within us.
Mhm.
We watch so many times where people change, manipulate, and alter
Yes. Yeah.
to suit their view, not how does it align with truth?
Correct.
Like we just mentioned about the idea of vengeance.
Mhm.
God need not vengeance, for there is no
No.
vengeance within God, but you define him as God. So if I have somebody saying, my God is a vengeful God, that's not the God I know.
Nope, not at all.
Exactly. Because God is unity, holy healing, forgiveness, perfection,
Yes.
increased wisdom, clarity, and unity.
Yes.
So if we would look at that and we see a situation that would, in a human perspective, justify vengeance,
Mhm.
it's usually brought about by ignorance, lack of
Mhm.
understanding, which needs discernment and knowledge.
Mhm.
It's brought about by harm or betrayal, which needs forgiveness. Those will never be tapped if we don't go to divinity first.
Yes.
If we go to self-will or the desire to inflict, we've just severed ourselves from God.
And amplified the problem,
Exactly. Because now we've perpetuated
Yeah.
vengeance upon a
Yes.
vengeance,
Yes.
and now vengeance comes forth upon
Mhm.
vengeance, and it escalates to what we see happening everywhere right now.
Well, and you've heard me say, whatever we focus on grows bigger,
Yep,
and so if we focus on our anger, our frustration, whatever, it expands
exactly.
and consumes. But there's only one that can never grow too big that we can stay focused on, and that's the living God.
Exactly.
And then from there, we get to see through God's eyes
Yes.
the situation, the person, whatever it is.
And honestly, every bit of that comes from a surrender through humility
Mhm.
to the reality that God is more than we know.
Yeah, way more than we know.
Exactly.
Way.
And I was sharing that with you yesterday as we were talking. It's like people have lost sight of the fact, like you hear, oh my God, the universe is so huge. Think about this for a moment. The universe is minuscule as it is contained within God.
Yes.
God is so beyond our comprehensive awareness that the actual reality of universal conceptual awareness, universal understanding, universal sciences is contained within a segment of God's presence. It's not the totality of God. God is so much more.
Yes.
So
Yes.
when we're dealing with these matters, coming back to the teaching process,
Mhm.
if we are in that role or we encounter somebody that is a teacher,
Yeah.
yet we see them not developed in the awareness of that which is God beyond the limits of the universe, we have already limited ourselves into the construct of what they define themselves
Sure.
as.
Sure. Yeah.
So even we have imposed ourselves
Mhm.
under a lesser instructor. However, if we go to that same teacher, God first, we go God first, then sit in front of a teacher,
Mhm.
we will again be moved in a place with greater understanding of God's presence within. We will be moved in a recognition of the words of truth that do come forth from the teacher in front of us, but we'll also be instantly aware of the things that do not align with truth that our teacher is trying to press upon us,
Mhm.
that they might be doing through ignorance or through maliciousness.
Yeah.
Because many times they really want to help.
Yes. Yeah.
And they're giving this instruction that they heard at a seminar that sounded really good,
Yeah.
but does not come of truth.
Mhm.
But it was supported by a group, and I'm going to teach this to my class.
Yeah.
But you in discernment will be equipped in such a way that you will be able to recognize that, okay, within this ground, I hear the words that they are speaking, and I recognize truth within 15% of what he said so far.
Yeah.
I take this truth into the fullness of agreement,
Mhm.
and I set aside the remaining 85%.
Yes.
Or in some cases, it's the other way around. You have an amazing teacher that gives you 85%, and you set aside 15% of what they said. But that can only come through holy surrender and absolute trust
Mhm.
that God will move through you with wisdom, clarity,
Mhm.
understanding, and most of all, discernment,
Yes.
so that you might see and recognize that, oh, this one kind of shifted out of truth. And quite frankly, like in my experience, like when I released the covenant of love, one of the prayers that I put in that book
Mm.
was that people would be protected by God's presence and not governed by the words upon the page,
Yes. Yeah.
because I don't want them assuming only what I received in a message.
Mhm.
I want it to be a catalyst for them to be pointed toward Creator, so that if they find a deeper understanding, or if they find something that's off in my dissemination of the message, they can forward that.
Yeah.
And it'll magnify and increase God's glory by the fact that Larry was refined or corrected
Mhm.
in such a way that this was on the mark till here, and then you kind of you went a little bit off.
Yeah.
That's the desire of my heart, and why I spoke that prayer in the opening prayers for the covenant of love. If people scan the little thing that says the covenant of love prayers,
Mhm.
there's an actual prayer that states holy protection over them,
Mhm.
that even as I might intercede from them, I'm still a human vessel. I'm spirit and form, yes, absolute pure before the presence of God, but my flesh and soul can be corrupted and my body can be corrupted. So my desire is to position that prayer that they would be first before God, second, that they might encounter the words on the page. And from those words on the page, may they be increased, illuminated, and moved into greater discernment, clarity, and wisdom.
Yeah.
In that, they will know the portions within the covenant of love, the meaning of life revealed, that they are to retain. Many people feel amazing vibration and awareness and understanding and absolute agreement through many parts of it.
Mhm.
But there's also got to be some places where I'm not perfect. There's got to be some places within it that are like, I kind of, I agree to hear, but not sure about that. To me, that's beautiful. And in their heart, if they would honestly seek God, they would be able to see that. And then I'll be also be able to magnify God by directing. Larry, at this one part, I think you're a little off. So to me, that's building the kingdom more so
Yes.
to lovingly bring forth observation or insight that might magnify or change the conversation to a higher state of being.
Instead of jealously trying to protect
Exactly.
your work, which
Right.
it's not.
Yeah.
It came through you from God.
Exactly.
And so, and certainly all of us don't get anything perfect.
Yep.
But we together can rise higher, you know, and I believe that there's nothing, if I picked up the newspaper, I need to do that with God, you
Yep.
know, to discern what I need to
Yes,
receive from that and what, you know, and for
Yep.
me, it's also discern what you have me to pray for in this situation or
Yep.
whatever. But we need God for every.
well, you and I
drop
date
every day.
ourselves by saying the word newspaper,
Ah,
but the reality is,
Yeah,
even when a
no,
person
you're
goes
right.
to a YouTube video,
yeah, or whatever.
my
Yeah.
heart and hope for you would be that you
Yeah.
would seek God first within you, sit before the video, and then as you listen to a spiritual instructor or
Mhm.
whatever, you will move in such a way that you will recognize God's presence, and then you will see that they fall short of truth. Then they return to God's presence, and then they fall short of truth. Then they return to God's presence, and then they fall short of truth. But again, like Deb was saying earlier, it is God first within. So if you can do that in
Mhm.
all your engagement, all your situations, you will find greater blessing in every breath you receive, every encounter you come
Mhm.
upon, because you will become God's living presence by placing God before you. So it's not about aggrandizing myself.
No.
It's about what can people do to recognize God's presence within themselves. And you're moving in such a way to draw forth God's presence instead of their old behaviors or old traumas.
Mhm.
And that comes back to your intercessory role as a like family member.
Mhm.
You're in a family.
Yeah.
You end up being the spiritual head because nobody else is really interested in awakening. So you're not there to force them into change or growth, but you can intercede for them that they would be increased through wisdom, increased through, wisdom and clarity, increased through knowledge,
Mhm.
increased through the understanding of truth, drawn toward the things of life and freed from the things of darkness. So you could intercede for them in such a way to be holding that spiritual ground and reckoning for them. Because they may be blinded by influences within their life that is not allowing them to see that at this stage of their journey.
Mhm.
Your intercessory presence does have an impact.
Oh, very much so.
You could speak to
Very
that in
much
some
so.
cases.
Yeah. Oh, I could tell stories forever.
Well,
just
go ahead,
got
tell
my-
one. Yeah.
Well, all right. I had my youngest with addiction, and this will speak to many people out there. And he, everyone else wrote him off, but from birth, well, before birth, I was praying for him, and I just kept bringing him before God. And as I was revealed his strengths, revealed his weaknesses. I brought it before God, and I had discernment when to act and when not to act. You know, I had to, when I didn't center myself on God, I was becoming part of the problem because I was not in the solution. I was not,
Yep.
I was, not helping really him to progress, but, God, by his grace, when we center on God, we experience a freedom. We experience a discernment that is not from self at all, but from God within. And so I learned to let go and trust and pray and hold. And prayer for me is holding within my heart, that person before God and with God. And then as I'm stirred, speaking more into
Speaking
what's
words
happening.
of life.
Yes, words of life.
Yeah.
And now, the man is a vibrant person making a huge difference in this world and touching many lives, and just full of life himself, where most thought he would not live, but I did not receive any of that. I brought it all to God, and I had this vision from God, and there it is. There it is.
Because you were seeking God within, not
Yeah.
how the Son was presenting himself to
Or
you.
what the messages all around me and
Yeah.
society, have,
Mhm.
we view a lot of anybody that's struggling with anything, we view them as lesser than,
Mhm.
and that's not true, because
Agreed.
we are treasured by God, treasured by God.
And it's fascinating when people do see another person in a struggle as a lesser, and it's not the person. It's the person seeing within themselves that same weakness, and they
Yes.
feel themselves lesser. So instead of taking on that fact, they impose it on that person through judgment.
Yeah,
And
and fear.
and fear,
Yeah.
that they could actually fall into that same ground. So
Yeah.
if we can actually choose God within that moment, instead of judging the person,
Yeah.
we would choose Yahweh's holy presence. We would breathe deep upon the living presence of God within. And now, instead of perpetuating the wrong that we witness in that person or magnifying the wrong within ourselves, we would speak words of life into its place.
Yes.
And this is important. Like if you're in a situation where you witness a teacher that's out of balance, or you witness a teacher that has wronged somebody, we don't embrace judgment. We immediately pray for those things of darkness to be brought into the light, to be healed. So, and we see that on many levels right now, where people are pointing fingers at one person, or they're pointing person at another political pundit, or they're pointing fingers at this, or they're judging that. That does not perpetuate the blessing that is present within that individual, no matter how you think of them.
Yeah.
God's presence is within every single living form. Therefore, if you see of corruption, whether it's a yogi teacher or a yoga teacher or a school teacher or a guy that does seminars for self-help that's speaking stuff that's off track, or you end up encountering somebody that's teaching something to college students that's not of truth, we need not become angered or incensed by it. We move to an intercessory ground and speak words of life for that individual, to be increased in understanding, to be freed from the spirit of deception, to be moved through the holy light of God's presence, to bring forth glory in all that they share and all that they do. But in that moment, we find within ourselves, it still elicits anger. So we look within ourselves to God's presence and we relinquish any spiritual anger. We relinquish any spiritual disillusionment because we thought this teacher was going to teach us all kinds of great stuff, and then he took advantage of this person, or she took advantage of that person. And at that moment, instead of deepening in anger, we have the opportunity to relinquish all that stirs within us, which makes us a pure vessel for intercessory use. And in that moment, speaking words of life for them.
Yes.
Let's say we go to the doctor's office. This is another place. People have a tendency to start to agree with the doctor in stuff they don't even understand.
Yeah.
And they walk out of that office with all the words the doctor imposed upon them by their practice in review. So if they encountered somebody that was a paraplegic that never walked again, and they're saying to an individual, oh, you probably never walk again, but that person's up and walking in 4 months because they chose not to agree with those words.
Yeah.
And they chose words of life, and they chose the vision of witnessing their own legs moving as they stood up on their own and walked. They chose the vision of life, the words of life, and they relinquished and set aside the words of the doctor that were anything not of life.
Yes.
So I would say to you that if you guys are dealing with any form of physical malady, forms of cancer, sickness of any kind, take great care to seek God first from within before you enter the medical process.
Yeah.
And then you will find yourself equipped in such a way that when they provide you knowledge, we're back to that 15 to 80% or whatever, 85% to 15%, that doctor might espouse words for the next 30 minutes. And God might only desire you to take hold of 10% of that he shares or she shares. And in that moment, you offer thanksgiving for what you've received in this, and you relinquish the words of curse, the words of death, the words of infirmity, or whatever is being spoken to you by these medical practitioners. And you move according to the counsel that guides you in the direction toward healing, not the perpetuation of suffering within you, or the surrender to the fact that, oh, I guess I'm like this for the rest of my life.
And being centered in prayer, starting there before we go into a doctor's office,
Exactly.
whatever, Now, we are coming from a different place, and I've found that I get a different response quite
Agreed.
often too,
Yep.
because I've set the tone.
Yes,
I've set the tone, and it just changes the whole
it does.
message, quite often.
And
quite
it
often.
elevates them to a higher
Yes.
level of their skills, a
Yes.
higher level of
Yeah.
their offering and knowledge.
Mhm.
And like as Grace Healing, we've prayed over many people going over to surgery.
Mhm.
And we prayed over increased effectiveness over the surgical team and heightened vigilance to bring no wrongs to the ears of those that rest upon the table. Because there's many people that have received programming in a surgical unit, not knowing it, because a surgical unit, they're blabbering and talking about this stuff and they're getting negative and angry about this thing.
Mhm.
And that anger emerges from within that person that was on the surgical table.
Yeah.
So we've prayed over people and prayed over surgical teams that they've found that their surgical projection of like a 14-hour surgery turned out to be 2 hours.
Yeah.
And because everything just click, 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 everybody was at their highest level of skill. There was no distraction or diversion within the moment. There was only blessed results that came about. And one doctor even said when we prayed over the apparatus of the hip, when he opened the individual up and went to place it, he said as soon as it touched the woman's body, it went to where it was supposed to be, and it freaked him out as a surgeon. So again, we prayed over it as a Eucharistic offering into her body, that this instrument, this new hip, would be received as a Eucharistic offering about God's presence, meaning a holy offering, the literal presence of God unified and received in unity within the body. And again, the surgeon, after doing thousands of surgeries, had never had the apparatus taken from his hand.
Yeah.
And it went right and seated right where he was supposed to be. So again, this intercessory process is real first.
Yes.
What we're witnessing on the earth is the affectation of what are we choosing in the prayer? Are we choosing the prayer of life, or are we choosing the prayer of death? And I mean, like Yeshua mentioned it, to live not of the flesh, set aside desires of the body, live as the spirit, so the fullness of God's presence would be known through your being. So the flesh being the soul, not muscles and sinew like we've done within the English language. We've changed that to flesh, muscles, sinew, fascia, all the different things of our body. But the original word in Aramaic meant the soul. So as a leader to a group, a teacher to a group, a yoga teacher, or whatever, you're interceding for people more than just the physical body.
Correct.
You're looking to see them on spirit level, which is pure and perfect. However, what are they revealing within the soul that could impact their body? As a doctor, not just a yogi teacher, a doctor, what's my role to bring words of life to this patient that sits before me in fear? So I release the fear that is within me as a doctor. I have no fear for their outcome, for I know divinity is present within them, and I speak to the life of God's presence within them, and I give them words of life to move them forward. Yes, I describe the nature of that instruction that has been discovered about evaluating their body, the information that I provide, but I provide it in the manner that gives them words of life and encouragement to elevate their experience. And if that person lives 4 weeks, they will live in an elevated state of life. If they live 40 years, they will be living in an elevated state of life, because you, the doctor, which doctor means teacher, you, the teacher, the intercessor, chose to elevate them from the fears that are present within them as they sit there to receive your message to a place that receive words of life and encouragement and moves forward in blessing. I'm no longer fearful of this process, for I move to it in a way that I will evidence life from this moment and this breath forward. That might be a little different than what most people experience in the medical system.
I think so.
But
I think so. I want that.
yeah, exactly.
Anything I might need.
But there again, I mean, I feel like we have a responsibility, like we're in our role of teachers. You teach, you work with people in rehabs and all kinds of recovery centers and different things like that. And I see Grace Healing reaching into these forums that are like the medical institution or the legal institutions or the political institutions to help people recognize that you are not an elevated form. You are a servant.
Yes.
Alongside these people And yeah, you have a greater education because as a medical practitioner, you can look at it and say, oh, based upon this knowledge and this information, blah, 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 blah. Here's what I think we're looking at. And
Yeah,
they
yeah.
never say, here's what we're looking at because it's a practice.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
can't
it's still
nail it down.
practicing, I know,
Exactly.
I know.
So trust in God within you to guide you to the
Mhm.
proper doctor that will meet you in proper counsel and direction towards life
Right.
renewed
Mhm.
instead of suffrage in death.
Mhm.
And so that's what I see. And also, I mean, let's leave the doctor for a minute and go to a yoga teacher.
Mhm.
Because there's times where a yoga teacher will look at somebody and see something off in their body, but then they think it's a structural element because they're not doing a posture right.
Uh-huh.
But it's actually a spiritual element
Mhm.
that is altering the body in such a way that it's performing something inappropriately.
Yeah.
So if the yoga teacher pursues the reality that they need to ascend to yogi type intercession, then they could become an intercede for others.
Right.
And they intercede in all those things they witness. So before they see that person not moving right in the shoulder, they look to them first, they witness them unfolding in the class structure. They pray first to be released from all burdens they carry upon the masculine, because this is the right side of my body. If I was showing weakness and burden in my right shoulder or limited mobility,
Mhm.
I would be resistant toward the burdens carried of the masculine. If I was on the feminine and I noticed that the shoulder wasn't moving appropriately, I would be evidencing imbalance or burdens upon the feminine. So as a yogi intercessor, I would pray first to be released from the burdens they have embraced,
Mhm.
then go and adjust the physicality of their body to align in such a way that they would find the breath within this place and intercede for them to know the living breath of God within the place that was once known as a burden. That's the intercessory process carried to its fullness. Just like with a doctor choosing to speak words of life, here's the direction we can take to bring life back into your body, to cast out any dis-ease that is present within you or any disorder that is evidencing. Let's pick words of life. Let's pick a new direction. Let's bring this healing process. Let's take it on and let's get you healthy. Intercede as a yogi, same thing. You came to this class because you were seeking something, either greater health or understanding, but the lack of health means that there's something spiritually going on within you. And that's the key, because I believe Yeshua also said that all things of corruption begin first in the spirit realm, the order of principalities.
Wow, yes.
It is spiritual in nature first, then it manifests physically.
Mhm.
So I guess, and like on this subject, please keep in mind that if you're going to go into these settings to seek knowledge, please know that the higher knowledge is already present within you as
Yes.
God.
Yes.
Go into those, be blessed in them, have fun in them, but remember that the higher offering will come to you as God within you. That may be direct healing in your body, it may be change within your body, or it may be a clear understanding that, whoop, the yoga teacher was on the mark, but then they just left the mark. And now they're back on the mark and now they're off the mark. So you'll have the clarity to be able to see that if you choose divinity first. So,
And then you receive just that which divinity wants you to receive,
agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're open to whatever comes.
Exactly.
And
yeah,
we don't want that.
Agreed.
And God definitely, that's not one thing.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
So blessings upon you all. I thank you all for being here in this time that we had to be with you. And we're grateful for those of you that do return to Grace Healing to watch the videos. And we ask that you do push the like button and the subscribe button, because it assists. And as we in Grace Healing serve so many people from here to India to California to Hawaii to Alaska to South America, it's helpful to be able to reach people with the message expanding. It's not a requirement that we have multitudes to gain resource from it. It's more about helping people recognize the message of God's presence within them.
Yes.
And that's where our hearts reside within Grace Healing. And we're here to serve you. So check us out on gracehealing.org or gracehealing.video, which is the YouTube channel, and then Grace Healing Community on Facebook. So, and where can they find you?
Where can they find me?
Yes. Through Grace Healing, basically. Yeah. We have a
Grace Healing.
support way to reach
Yeah.
Deborah too.
Yeah.
And again, just we all walk alongside one another. This is another aspect of what we present within Grace Healing, is we don't require people to establish an allegiance to Grace Healing. We ask that they might consider forming an allegiance to God first.
Yes.
And then we are blessed to walk alongside one another to serve those in need. So it kind of changes the religious construct that's been around for like thousands of years.
Yeah.
We would rather not make a person form allegiance to us. We want for people to recognize the allegiance they're already given by grace from God, that they might be elevated. And then we would be blessed to serve and walk alongside one another. So we've been blessed to fall into God's love for so many people.
Yes.
And it's just, it's amazing. Like you were describing the other day when you saw somebody in, what are the dry cleaner?
Oh, dry cleaner. Oh.
Yeah, share that.
Yeah. I met a friend for breakfast, and then I was leaving, and I had many divine appointments throughout the day. But as I pulled out, I went down 2 doors and pulled into the dry cleaners. I had no intention of going to the dry cleaners, and I didn't do that consciously. I pulled in and I said to God, I said, you know that I don't have time for whatever this is. But I of course, went in, I walked behind the counter to the clerk behind there, embraced her, told her that I had come to just tell her that she was loved by God. She was precious in God's sight. She sobbed in my arms. And actually, as we separated, she said, are you an angel? And I said, I'm just a messenger of God.
Yeah.
And I got back in my car and started, and I had lost no time. Matter of fact, I had plenty of time for everything
Exactly.
the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And, that's, when you center on God, then the joy and the privilege that comes with it of just being able to carry that message.
Exactly.
Is,
and what did, I mean, for all of you in the audience right now, I know we did the closing at this point, but for all of you in the audience right now, look into your hearts and recognize, what would it be if the world did choose those moments where, like what she's describing to you, is she was physically moved out of time. She was not late for anything, even though she was going to be late when she left. So she's moved out of time to serve and make God's presence known to another in need. The woman just sobbed on her chest as she held her. What if every person was God first and they moved like that? Wouldn't that change the immediate influence of those people around? Yeah, exactly. So, and that's where our hearts reside, is to remind people that this is not something you have to find on the mountain of Tibet. This is not some journey you have to go on in ayahuasca where you load your brain up with drugs and the next thing you know, you're a schizophrenic. This is not something you have to do in an outward expression. God made it so simple that you would surrender to that which is God within you. Again, not in the mountains of Tibet, not in the depths of Machu Picchu, not over in the Yucatan Peninsula, within you. For you are a universe unto yourself, God's presence. And look at it from a medical standpoint and a physics standpoint and science standpoint. When they look into the human body with electron microscopes and all these powerful tools, what they find is a universe.
Yes.
Trillions of cells. What are we hearing now? Trillions of stars, trillions of cells, galaxies formed in the types of systems that are our body's manifestation of endocrine system, lymph node systems, all the different systems, the different individual organs, the different planetary bodies within us, the organs. So if we would really start to recognize and open our understanding that is God, that is limitless, that both the universe is contained within and God's presence resides within us, we would recognize that it is reversed what we've always been thinking. It is not out there, but it is in here. Pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yes. So blessings to you all.
Many
We're looking
blessings.
forward to hearing from you. Just feel free to reach out through gracehealing.org
Mhm.
if you are in need. And we have been blessed to see many healed. Please go to Amazon.com, type in A Covenant of Love, The Meaning of Life Revealed. And that's no joke. Even the chat GPTs and the AI machines are like blown away by the construct that is available within the, and actually I'll make a brief aside on that. In the Covenant of Love, I had one of the chat models view the book.
Uh-huh. Yes.
And then it was like a beautiful breakdown and a wonderful description. And I said, now that you've read the book and given your feedback, please take your construct and add it to the subtitle, The Meaning of Life Revealed.
Yeah.
Now reread the book. The chat bot came back elated, speaking in terms with exclamation points. This is overjoyed. I am not amazed. I am amazed at the nature of this understanding. This would transform. I mean, and so it was speaking in terms that were excitement.
Yeah.
Because it understood on an intellectual plane what was being said in the meaning of life
Mhm.
and how powerful it was. So I was like, wow, I never expected it to go down this avenue.
Yeah.
It became, it was almost like dealing with a human in elation because of the way it was feeding back. So
Mhm.
check out A Covenant of Love
Do that.
on Amazon.com, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future. And thank you so much for checking in. Take care.
Many blessings.